Good afternoon and welcome everyone. Welcome to today's session on how AWS migration and modernization accelerates business transformation. This session is a level 200 session and today you learn more about how leading companies are using AWS to transform their business twice as fast through AI powered cloud migrations, modernizations. It's my pleasure to welcome to the stage Nicole Ong and Priyank Pashine. Please give them a big round of applause.
70% of business transformations fail today. And what I'm about to say might be contentious, and please be nice, but this is due to a combination of factors. And stop me if these sound familiar, stop me if they resonate or you completely disagree. Leadership barriers, that active inertia of needing to follow established patterns, protecting legacy investments rather than evolving with environmental shifts. The cultural constraints, and this is one of my favorite, the fear of failure. Creating a risk-averse culture within your teams, creating resistance to change, be it new technologies, be it new ways of working. And you can't forget the operational reality of legacy systems, manual processes that result in heavy costs, undepreciated heavy lifting. But as we know, and I think it's when most of us are here, transformation isn't just a technology challenge. It is about people and skills. And as fast as technology is evolving today, we know that the capabilities are lagging behind the technical needs today. So how do we change this narrative? How do we turn these barriers into bridges? If these sound familiar, you're in the right place. And I also recognize that I am between you and the end of the day, so please be patient, please be nice. I'll make sure this goes through as seamless as possible. I'm Nicole Ong, a Senior Customer Solutions Manager at AWS, and my role is to support organizations like yourselves to navigate business transformation from strategy through to execution. Later, we'll be joined by my colleague Priyank, who is a Principal Migration and Modernization Advisor, and he makes it his everyday mission to create a path of least resistance to your cloud journey. So today we'll cover three key areas. The first, AWS migration and modernization landscape, including some of our AI-driven innovations, and I'm sure that's why most of us are here. Second, transformation pathways for 5 core workloads, showing you real examples of success. And finally, I guarantee you practical next steps that you'll walk away to accelerate your own journey. Before we walk through the what and the how, let's capture the state of play. Despite these known barriers that I've just mentioned, we're still seeing 63% of organizations accelerating their cloud migration. 70% of the organizations are making cloud their default choice for new technologies. This is up from 57% in 2022. And this isn't just a trend, this is definitely not a hype trend. This is due to forward-thinking teams like yourselves here in the different rooms that realize that the traditional approaches are no longer suitable, that cloud is business imperative. So why? And I'm sure as you've attended many of the talks during Summit, you'll recognize that AI and machine learning are quickly emerging as game changers. We are seeing 64% of organizations put in significant investments in this. And in my role, I've definitely heard the words agentic AI. I'm sure a show of hands, those who've heard it today and every day. And so what the numbers are showing is that the market isn't waiting and AI is the new accelerator. So where are you in your transformation journey? But you're going to ask me, why can't I get onto the cool new tools, that robot dog that you've probably seen across Summit, why can't I just use this today? Most of us who are developers or who have been hands-on recognize that legacy systems can't, or rarely, they lack the scalability, the agility, and the performance to support these advanced AI workloads. This is where AWS's approach to migration and modernization becomes critical. So I'm going to share a story that I think you'll resonate with. Danske Bank stood at the base of what seemed like an impossible mountain. Over 16,000 servers, 60,000 containers, 25 petabytes of data, and 1,000 workloads to migrate. Industry standards said that this migration would take between 5 to 8 years, but in today's fast-moving world, that was not good enough. So rather than accept this traditional timeline, rather than accept the traditional approach, they choose to reimagine how they did this. Through hyper-automation and deep collaboration with AWS experts, they were able to automate 90% of their migration activities. They went They didn't just accelerate their timeline, they were also able to reduce it by half, while reducing costs by 50%. What used to take 3 to 4 weeks to create an automation runbook for applications now takes 4 seconds. And I'm sure, as you've seen some of the capabilities that we've gone through throughout the summit, you'll see how this can be done. But more importantly, and probably the most powerful outcome, and where I'll emphasize quite a fair bit, is they invested in their people. They trained over 700 employees in cloud best practices. And you hear me say this quite a bit, and let's play a game of how many times I say transform or transformation in this talk. And if you're paying attention, I'll keep track and you'll see me after. You win a prize maybe. But they trained these employees that now have been trained up and are no longer working on undifferentiated heavy lifting, are now free to innovate on the edge, free to build solutions that directly benefit their customers. So before we go through all of this, let's align on what we mean by migration and modernization. I'm sure we all have our definition of that. A lot of organizations first saw cloud as a destination to put their workloads. But as we've seen with Danske Bank, and a lot of organizations who have successfully transformed, we know that there's much more. Migration and modernization is a continuous journey. It starts with strategic decisions to migrate to the cloud, but what comes next is where the power lies. The constant ability to evolve, to innovate, and to transform how your business operates. The combination of strategic migration and continuous modernization doesn't just reduce costs and improve efficiency, but it fundamentally shifts the way you serve your customers, empower your employees, and drive innovation. As we saw with Danske Bank's success, building a successful cloud enterprise is like designing a modern building. You'll need strong foundations, robust infrastructure, efficient systems, and the right expertise to bring it all together. So let's explore each element of this architecture and how AWS supports you through that journey. You'll start where every great building begins, the foundation. AWS provides the most comprehensive cloud infrastructure with unmatched security and reliability as you go through this. Organizations have seen an average of 66% infrastructure cost reduction while reducing 45% of security incidents. Now, just as a building system keeps it running efficiently, your applications drive your business forward. Whether you're running Microsoft, VMware, Oracle, or mainframe technologies, AWS provides robust tools to migrate these applications, these mission-critical systems. So this is the layer to start reimagining how your business operates. So now, if applications are your building systems, data is the power that flows through them. With the industry's broadest selection of purpose-built databases and analytics, again, I'm sure you've heard some of these services today, we're helping over 2 million customers solve some of their most complex data challenges, turning your information resources into innovation engines. And as we know, without data, there is no innovation. So this layer is fundamentally important. Finally, just as you need experts, architects, and builders to bring a building together, you'll need the right expertise to move to cloud. AWS accelerates your journey through our comprehensive services, our programs I'll talk about in a little bit later, some expertise backed by a global network of 140,000 partners across more than 150 countries. And over the past 19 years, we've helped thousands of customers migrate their applications, their data, and transform their businesses. We have also honed in and continued to improve our infrastructure, our purpose-built migration and modernization tools, architectural best practices, and prescriptive guidance to help you simplify every step of that journey. With the availability of AI, we also thought to ourselves, how can we completely reimagine enterprise cloud architecture, and how can we completely reimagine how that is built today? How can we make this process dramatically faster and easier? How can we continue to replicate the successes of Danske Bank? What if we put 19 years of expertise that have gone into our existing services, our prescriptive guidance, and our training to make that work for you in a completely new way, with AI agents and assistants, of course, to drive migration and modernization success? Well, we did reimagine it, and probably why you're here. And at reInvent last year, we unveiled 3 new capabilities for Amazon Q Developer. The results were so positive, we've now launched that service as a standalone service called AWS Transform. So let's take a look how this powerful new service helps you. AWS Transform is the first generative AI-powered assistant specifically designed to accelerate your migration and modernization. We chose to start with 3 of the most challenging workloads: .NET, VMware, and IBM mainframe technologies. They represent some of the most complex yet common challenges, and our belief is that by starting with the hardest challenges, we can virtually handle any migration and modernization scenario. This is the new unified migration and modernization web-based console. You'll start by sharing your project objectives. AWS Transform will use agentic AI to assess that new environment and present a customized plan. As you move forward, you'll work directly with Amazon Q to manage approvals and reviews. You're able to see real-time progress tracking while you log every action to understand what happened and why. And you're able to use Amazon Q to chat with them for support, to ask questions and look at resources. Essentially, your entire transformation in one place. Now I'll invite Priyank on stage, who will take you through how these AI-powered capabilities transform your most critical workloads from Microsoft to mainframe, that we've developed specific pathways for success. Welcome, Priyank.
Thank you, Nicole. Good evening, everyone. I realize Nicole and I sit between you and the drinks, so we'll be quick. Let's talk about Microsoft workloads. We've been running Microsoft workloads on AWS Cloud since 2008, and we're going to talk about how AWS Transform can help you modernize and migrate at scale, but also look at what might be some other options for you to run your Microsoft workloads on AWS. So, the first option is to use BYOL. I'm sure a lot of you have your workloads licensed by Microsoft, and if you wish, AWS offers the license mobility option, which means you can port your licenses to AWS, you can maintain the ROI on your investment, and just run Microsoft workloads on AWS without any further problems. The next option would be to procure and secure your AWS Microsoft licenses through AWS directly. Now what that means is AWS does all the audit and reporting associated with that licenses, which means you can focus on running your workloads, but also you'd have no upfront commitment and you just use PAYG for your licensing options. So that really accelerates and optimizes your license consumption model. The third mechanism would be to consider replatforming. So if you got a legacy Windows operating system, or you're looking to move to an open source solution, you could migrate your workloads onto an open source Linux environment, for example. And then finally, the thing to consider is, okay, if you have SQL databases, could you potentially benefit by running them through a managed offering such as Amazon RDS? Moving on, if you look at the landscape of the .NET environment, a newer Linux-based .NET framework's been available since 2016. However, 34% of all .NET environments still use the 2002 framework, which means that environments are complex, customers are running multiple hybrid versions, which means if you were to consider migrating or modernizing these workloads, it is going to be incredibly complex. But we have a solution for you. AWS Transform to the rescue. The way this works, and Nicole quickly shared that management and console for migration and modernization, the way this works is you connect AWS Transform to your .NET environment, which then allows you to perform discovery. And that discovery is incredibly important, but with the power of AI, you optimize that discovery, you fast track that discovery, and what used to take weeks and months can now be done fairly quickly. Then you go on and plan the migration. Now you can imagine, you've got multiple applications, there are interdependencies. What should I migrate first? What should I leave behind? And if my migration is going to be 6 to 12 months, how should I couple my application migration? Again, with the power of AWS Transform, you can do that planning in relatively short time. Then you do your transformation, and AWS Transform can do the code conversion for you. Again, at a click of a button, The good thing about this is AWS Transform offers you self-debugging capability, but also allows you to have human feedback and intervention should you believe that some of the transformation is not quite right as you would expect. And then you validate that and you deploy that. So you can see, right, if you had multiple versions of .NET and if you're looking to modernize, what would take months or years perhaps can now be done reasonably quickly using AWS Transform. Shifting focus to VMware. Show of hands, who's heard about the Broadcom acquisition of VMware? Thought so, most of the room has. This shift or this acquisition indicates a massive shift in terms of the industry landscape. Let's talk about some of the options or some of the mechanisms we have for you to accelerate the modernization of your VMware workloads. A recent study by Gartner suggests that despite hundreds of thousands of workloads running on AWS EC2, 70 million workloads worldwide still remain on-premise. And 74% of those customers who have those workloads are thinking about how do we get out of our current environment and onto cloud to optimize the value of cloud. So again, as you saw with .NET, we have a similar mechanism for you to accelerate your modernization journey through AWS Transform. You start off with asset discovery. You can upload your RV tools extract or an output from any other discovery tool that you might have onto AWS Transform, and what AWS Transform then does is it performs a network mapping. Now again, I referred to interdependencies when we were talking about .NET. Similarly, the same challenges exist even with VMware workloads. So network mapping is incredibly important, which then allows you to do a sequence planning, similar, okay, what do I migrate first? What do I leave behind? What is the latency consideration that I must have between applications that remain on-premise and those that have moved to AWS cloud already? You then perform application migration through infrastructure as a code. AWS Transform will build that infrastructure as a code option for you, which means you can execute at scale, you can reduce errors, and you can do it consistently. And then finally, you can do test and cut over. Oftentimes, when we look at migrations and modernization, we forget to imagine what might be the complexity with testing. AWS Transform can help overcome those challenges as well. We recognize that not all of you are ready for migration to AWS using Transform, so we have partnered with Nutanix and Red Hat to offer you an ability to run those workloads directly on AWS Cloud. And to further complement, we have a brand new service called Amazon Elastic VMware Service, which allows a speedy provisioning of environment. It allows you control familiar tools such as vMotion that you've used in the past on VMware can be run on AWS as well. And then of course, it supports third-party integration for applications such as backup and so on. So the premise is that you can move quickly to AWS Cloud without having to worry about breaking your operating environment. Talk about SAP workloads. Now, we've been consistently named the best AWS, the infrastructure provider for S4HANA by ISG for 7 consecutive years. And AWS has been a strong partner with SAP since a long time. So what might be some of your options for SAP? The first one is RISE with SAP on AWS. And what this does is it allows the power of AWS Nitro system to give you the reliability and performance required for the complex workloads such as SAP S4HANA. The other option is Grow with SAP, and this offers the ability to use SAP's Business AI and Amazon Bedrock for generative AI intelligence embedded inside the offering itself, which allows you to use the power of AI for analytics and further drive improvements in your business. Oracle databases, recently we announced Oracle at AWS, and that allows for you to run Oracle databases directly in AWS data centers. Now, the power of Oracle's Oracle databases capability combined with AWS's cloud capability makes it incredibly powerful consideration for you to think about when you look at modernizing and migrating your Oracle databases. We offer easy migration, which means you're not doing schema conversions. Because it's like for like, you can do migration at a relatively fast pace. You have zero ETL integration for analytics, and then a unified experience to operate, manage, and support your environments. Moving quickly on to mainframe. Now, every time you book an airline ticket, or you make a telephone call, or you do a transaction with your bank, it's likely that you're interacting with mainframe technology. Mainframes remain the most complex workloads to migrate and modernize. So how can AWS Transform help you with that? We'll quickly look at the same or similar 5-step approach. We start off with analyzing the environment, and the analysis is incredibly simplified because AWS Transform uses large language models rather than rules-based analysis. So that simplifies the analysis of your environment. Then you document the logic, the business logic. As you can imagine, these mainframe workloads are quite complex and they require a lot of careful management of the code. We can do that via the document aspect of AWS Transform. We then decompose this, and the whole intent of decomposition is essentially to break down the monolith into smaller, more manageable chunks. Now, over time, what has happened is that customers have migrated some features out of mainframe into some other services. We need to identify what those orphans are, and the decomposition allows that to happen. We then plan the migration. Something that would take a long time can again be done at the click of the button using the console that Nicole previously shared, and then we refactor. And the premise of refactoring is transitioning your COBOL code into a Java code. So with that, you've seen the power of AI and how AWS Transform can help you accelerate your migration and modernization journey. Let me invite Nicole back, who will take you through some practical next steps to actually mature this into a tangible option for you. Thank you.
We're at a final stretch. Now we've looked at technology, and the next setup, I promise, is looking at some of the services and programs that can help you in your next steps. Where do we start? And I get this question a lot from my customers. It is what we've said, we know and recognize that migration and modernization isn't as simple as we've just presented over the last few minutes. One of the ways and the best way to start is actually understanding your current state, your actual resource usage. One of these programs is the AWS Optimization and Licensing Assessment. This is a complimentary program that allows you to maximize value before and after migration. The OLA, or AWS Optimization and Licensing Assessment, OLA for short, is a program that provides you a detailed analysis of your actual resource usage to help you right-size your deployment and find the most cost-efficient licensing options. So whether you're looking at Microsoft, Oracle, or VMware workloads, this program can help you. We've seen a 77% reduction in Windows Server licensing costs, 45% in SQL Server costs, and for Oracle workloads, we're seeing an average of 35% reduction in the required cores. So what this does is provides you the roadmap for efficiency and optimization. So now that you've seen how we can optimize licensing in your resources, how about you accelerate your actual migration? And for managers out there, this is a commercial construct that's very important. The Migration Acceleration Program, or MAP for short, is a comprehensive program that provides a powerful financial plan with investment support from migration credits, but also the technical expertise backed by our AWS professionals and partners. They provide you tools, methodologies, and frameworks. Think of this as your complete migration runbook that is built across 3 phases, and I hope they're familiar. Assess, where we look at your readiness, we look at your current state, we start building that baseline and that business case. And then we have mobilize, where we start building the landing zone, the foundation for these migration and modernization activities. Here's also where we start to train your teams. As we said, this is also a people and process problem that we're trying to solve. And finally, your migration and modernization. Here's where we execute your actual migration and your modernization. The MAP program is backed by AWS professionals and partners, and I hope you've met some of our migration experts during Summit, also some of the booths that they have with our partners. This provides you the roadmap. Now let's think about the developers in the room. How do we actually build in these capabilities? I think that's and this is probably my favorite program. Maybe I'm biased because half my team's here. we run this program, the Experience-Based Acceleration Program, or EBAs. And if you've noticed, we really like our 3-letter acronyms: OLAs, your MAPs, and your EBAs. But this isn't, and for those developers who have attended immersion days or game days, or even some of our training and certification courses, this isn't theoretical training. This is a hands-on immersive experience, and I'm not exaggerating because I have run a lot of this in my tenure at AWS. But this is a learning by doing exercise, where we are able to achieve tangible outcomes that would have taken months in days. This is where we bring cross-functional teams, specifically siloed teams, to work in a different way. We're working with accelerated decisioning, unblocking things in real time, and achieving outcomes, whether it's accelerating migrations, modernizations, trying to optimize costs with FinOps, or also driving innovation and building new use cases. When we talked about that, when I mentioned at the very beginning, the cultural change of creating a place that is safe to experiment, without that fear of failure, the EBA does that. And anecdotes that I've heard in running this program, consistently across different customers, is that it starts with, I didn't think it was possible. This would have taken us months. Or my new favorite, I would love to run this every week. And for some of my customers, particularly mine, we are doing this every week to achieve these outcomes. So these 3-letter acronyms that we love, OLAs, MAPs, and EBAs, they're just a few of the many programs that we have. But we don't do this alone. We do this with the support of our partners, of our team, and as you see here, an extensive network of migration and modernization competent partners. And these are carefully validated experts who will help you through every step of that process to accelerate your transformation. So to round out what we've just talked about, how do we get started? Book your free AWS optimization and licensing assessment with your account team, if you have an account team, or the migration-friendly experts that I'm sure are in the audience and also around Summit. We'll look at analyzing your current costs, establish that baseline to really get you started. Next, enroll in either a MAP or EBA program in your acceleration to get that investment support, but also that structured guidance that you'll need to run your migration and modernization. And finally, and I think very importantly, find the right partner, AWS partner, to help build these capabilities internally and create that customized migration plan. With that, I thank you for joining us and staying through the talk. We'll be available after the session if you have any questions.
Thank you, Nicole and Priyank, for